Hello everybody and welcome to part 20-something of my Fire Emblem 6 hard mode chapter guide. Today we're going to be looking at chapter, I believe this is 18 on the Sacae side. We are slowly making our way through the hellscape that is Sacae. I mentioned last time that the chapter that we were doing wasn't super tedious, but that a lot of future Sacae chapters are going to have annoying gimmicks and be pretty annoying. This is definitely one of them. Definitely not the most annoying of the Sacae chapters, but this is where you're going to really start to get Sacae. So yeah, let's just dive right into it. As you can see, this chapter is extremely open. You're pretty far away from the boss, but not too far, and you have a pretty straight shot. Um, but this is the chapter where you really start fighting nomads and nomad troopers quite a bit. There's also a decent amount of myrmidons here. Thankfully, there's no like swordmasters. But the myrmidons, even at this stage, even though they're unpromoted, can still be pretty darn annoying. But again, basically all of the nomads on this chapter will immediately start pushing you. So this is where what we talked about with like low hit rates and finding it difficult to find like enemy phase combat is going to be really frustrating. So finding some of that yourself, obviously like Demiband, or not Demiband, that's Path of Radiance, Delphi Shield, Milady, or Percival, or any of your strong calves or whatever with the Javelin can attempt to do chip damage, but this is where that can get pretty frustrating. There's not too much else I want to mention here. The druid next to the boss has physics, so that could be annoying. And there is a gimmick around the boss himself. Basically, once you get within that range, like randomly spawned nomads are going to come out of the houses. This is really annoying and tedious. And if you're trying to like set up a recruit over the course of 2 turns, like killing the boss, his name is Monkey, by the way, which is kind of funny, but trying to like kill the boss and then recruit with or seize with Roy, this can definitely be annoying because these nomads can come out and absolutely destroy your Roy. Especially if he's not trained very much. So this is where having health on Roy can be really important, and potentially doing a sort of 1-turn seize through the sort of house wall around Monkey. So we'll talk about it more when we get into the chapter, but just know that despite this chapter being really tedious, and it is, it's pretty straightforward. It's just about where and how you can get combat and try to get as much enemy phase combat in particular as you can to sort of thin the herd of nomads and nomad troopers. Okay, so I'll go over the preps really quick. There's not really much to talk about here. There is nobody to like recruit on the chapter or anything. We're not going to be getting any new units. Basically, just bringing obviously your strongest units is really important. Shin can be really really annoying here, really amazing here. So can Milady, so can your paladins. I will just point out Douglas. I mentioned him. Not a particularly strong unit, and is going to really struggle to hit these things. But he can be kind of helpful because that 20 defense means that these guys deal no damage to him. Basically, none of the nomads and even the nomad troopers can deal very little damage to Douglas. So he can be a really nice character to go to. This is slight, I would say, desperation, just because again his damage output is so weak. Just be aware of that. Fur can also be a really nice option here. Basically, even at base, she already takes like no damage for nomads and very little damage for nomad troopers. And I believe the way the AI works in this game is such that they'll like prioritize her because they think that she has 2 defense and not the 17 defense she actually has. Again, she can't deal like enemy phase damage. She doesn't have 2 range. But if you're a little bit desperate, Faye or Fa can be a really nice option for that. So just be aware of those 2 things, or anyone really that has really good defense. I think our Trek, despite being pretty weak, has decent defense, yeah. But yeah, as I said, this is going to be pretty darn straightforward. Basically, you're just going to want to get to around here as quickly as possible. The reinforcements on this chapter that come from like over here and down here, and then I believe some wyverns come from over here, I believe started around turn 10. So ideally what you can do is get around here just before turn 10 and set up the recruit, or the seize. I don't know why I keep saying recruit. Set up the seize on the boss around that time. I will say, I didn't mention this at the top of this chapter, but there are no status stabs in this chapter, which is actually really nice because you don't have to worry about like being in restore range or anything. This is the only like strong magic anything in the chapter, to be completely honest. The boss is pretty tough here. We'll talk about him when we get there, mostly because he's really fast, but his con is pretty bad. He essentially has 24 speed because he gets weighed down by 4 by both of his items. And while 21 is still like a pretty speedy dude, his 15 or his 14 defense isn't that high, so not too difficult to deal with. But again, we'll talk about him more when we get there. So I'll start up the chapter and we'll start skipping around at this point. Okay, there's one more thing that I wanted to mention before we actually start the chapter, and that is these two shops. I think I mentioned this a little bit when we were in Aelia, because they have similar shops, but just be aware that, like, killing, or killer weapons are basically, like, the best weapon type to buy in the game. It's a shame you actually can't buy killer bows here. It's a really big shame that you can't buy killer bows, especially if you train someone like Shin. But the rest of the killing weapons are really good. They have basically the best hit rate in the game, along with iron weapons. They have really good might, and obviously that crit is extremely nice. Steel is awful in this game. The hit rate is terrible, and even silver, the hit rate is not particularly good. So killing weapons is definitely the way to go, and this is a good place to stock up, or just on more iron weapons if you're sort of out. You can also buy physics and restores here. I don't know exactly what I have in my convoy, but I'm definitely going to be at least selling to buy one more restore, and physics can be really nice. Obviously, we have the silver card as well. I don't have it currently equipped, but all this stuff is cheaper if you have that. So definitely some nice stuff to buy here. Bringing Merlinus is not a terrible idea at all. Okay, so this is a really good example right off the bat of just how annoying finding these enemies can be. There are these forest tiles around here, and obviously the enemies will be prioritizing getting on them. And you should as well, obviously. But let's say we go to fight this guy with Milady, even with a Brave, even with an Iron Lance or an Iron Sword. Iron Sword, we're looking at 63%, which isn't too bad, but if you want to do 2 range, we're looking at 33%, which even off the forest tile means we're only going to be looking at a 50%. So Milady can be a really nice tool here because obviously with the Delphi Shield, she is strong enough to basically take nothing from these units. And one of the really nice things about putting her down here, or any flyer for that matter, or potentially like Shin, who can sneak past these rivers, is that a lot of these nomads are going to be congested down here, which can help your sort of weaker units get through. This is sort of a strategy, I would say, more for like a weaker team. Again, as I've said in the past chapter, our team is just pretty strong overall, so we can pretty much, I would say, bulldoze through this. But if you have certainly a weaker team or haven't trained all of the units that I have, it can be a bit more tedious, and sort of disrupting the, not having all the nomads like congeal, I guess you could say, become congested around here is really useful. Percival is another good example of this. He's really strong, and his defense means that he takes very little damage. But that 16 skill and the javelin's low hit rate is going to make this really annoying. My Milady doesn't have capped skill or anything, but 21 skill should be enough for decent enough hit, but with javelins it's just so inconsistent. Okay, I just want to show off just how many nomads and nomad troopers are on this chapter. Again, there's not much to this chapter if you have like a strong enough Milady or whatnot, at least dealing with them. It's just tedious. It's not like particularly difficult. I can basically do whatever I want with Milady, part of why she's so strong. But there are so many nomads, and if you have slightly less defensive units, like maybe you're just using, oh, our lance is like hella frail, and it's 10 defense. Jeez, it can get a lot more tedious, especially if they're getting doubled. But in the case of Milady, you can pretty much just do whatever you want with her. Even though, again, just be aware, there are a million units on this chapter. Okay, so we're getting pretty close to the end here. I've thinned a lot of these nomads. Just be aware, again, I don't really want to show it in like gruesome detail, I guess, just how annoying and tedious it is to like slowly pick apart these nomads, but just be aware that we have slowly been picking them apart. One of the things I wanted to mention is that I believe they do also not understand the Delphi Shield, because as you can see, all 4 of these nomads attacked Milady, and Milady is like one of the strongest units here. Like, they may as well be attacking Lance, but they're not. So that's another thing that you can kind of utilize, because I believe they will prioritize Milady, even though you should never prioritize Milady, because they don't realize that she has a Delphi Shield and they think they have effective damage. It is turn 5, so even though it definitely seems like there's a lot of units to get through, if you just kind of slowly chunk through them, killing a handful of nomads a turn, you can definitely do it. So at this stage, what we're going to do is clear up the last couple of nomads, and then I'll probably come back when I set up around here, and we'll talk about the gimmick of this chapter and how to kill the boss. Okay, so at this stage, like I said when we started this, basically what happens is once you get past this ring of houses, whether it's over here, oh, there's a guy standing there, or over here, randomly nomads will spawn. So I have a save state just before this, just in case something bad happens, but basically, there are a few different ways to approach this. You don't have to do this all in one turn if you don't want to, but again, these enemies can be fairly dangerous. Hypothetically, you have a stronger Rucker than this at this point, and Rucker can do a pretty good job here. Ours only has 14 strength, but hypothetically yours will have more. Lou can also usually do a pretty good job, although our Lou surprisingly doesn't double. Lilina can also hit really hard, especially with Roy support. Part of the problem with this boss is that hit rates just aren't that high. But if you can kind of find, like, combined damage, you can kill him. But I'm gonna have... Let me heal Rucker. I'm gonna have Rucker go over and attack him, and then I'm gonna show the Nomad spawning, just to show off the gimmick. See if we can get a crit too, why not? Right into our trap. Okay, no crit. That's okay. The boss also has double brave weapons, so just be aware of that. This isn't the best strategy in the world because obviously Rucker is in, you know, a pretty dangerous situation right now. I guess I'm gonna have Rucker do that. Well, let's just show it off. So yeah, so as you can see, this is part of the reason it's so dangerous, because that Nomad Trooper just spawned right next to Roy, which is not great, because obviously you don't want Roy taking Nomad Trooper hits. So definitely a pain, and this is again why doing it all in one turn is definitely preferable. The nice thing is that only one Nomad spawned. I don't know the exact number, but I think it's somewhere between like 1 and 3, something like that, from all those houses. So it can definitely be a lot worse than this. Nice, Rucker. Let's go, buddy. Now, our Roy, as you're about to see, does have 58 HP because of the robes. So we actually can't... We actually could have died there to a crit. So even in our situation, with our busted HP Roy, we're still in a pretty tenuous situation. So at this point, I'll probably just try to kill the boss in this turn, and then I'll come back when it's done. But just be aware that, again, if you want to do it in 2 turns like that... So the other thing I'll mention is, how do you get Roy to the throne? Just Lalum. Lalum could obviously be a really nice offensive tool at being able to, like, have, you know, Shin or somebody attack again, but just save Lalum if you can and just Roy C's. After you kill the boss, I believe the reinforcements do not stop. We can actually check that in a second, but I believe they don't stop, so yeah, just be aware that killing the boss doesn't stop them. Okay, so at this point the boss has been defeated. I did have to use Lalum on Lou, but either way, I just want to see if they do spawn. Yeah, so as you can, this is actually going to be bad. We're probably going to lose right here. So this is why this chapter can be really dangerous. And as you can see, 3 Nomad Troopers did just spawn. So this is why, again, doing it all in one turn is really advantageous, because this can be really bad. Because your Roy can just get sniped, and especially if you're doing an Iron Man, this can be extremely bad. So that's unfortunate. I'm going to go back to just before that happened, and we'll try to run this back. But yeah, obviously if you're doing an Iron Man, this can be, you know, a lot more scary to do, and this is one of the reasons, again, that I think doing it all in one turn, if you can, is extremely useful here. Okay, so again, for like the 5th time, I just want to talk about how annoying this boss is. In this situation, I had a Nomad spawn over here, so I also want to mention that the range of enemies that can spawn around here varies quite a bit. As you can see, the first time we had the Nomad Trooper spawn, then we had 3 Nomad Trooper spawn, and then just 1 Nomad spawned over here. I didn't show that, but that's what happened on this this thing. Trying to do it all in one turn is definitely difficult, because again, you're relying on basically 50 to 60 hit rates at the most, sometimes even lower, so it can definitely be annoying. So if you're doing this on an Iron Man, just try to be as careful as you can. But again, because Roy needs to be around here, you can only, like, be so careful, I guess. But yeah, that is the end of this chapter. As I said, for the most part, this chapter is just about killing the boss and how tedious that can be, but the first part of the chapter can also be really annoying. So yeah, that is chapter 18 on the Sacae side. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I will see you next time.